With this accomplishment, African Americans' more confident assertion of their legal rights contributed to racial restriction attempts by whites at state public beaches fading away. As the 20th century advanced, African Americans around the U.S. would increasingly utilize legal actions and public protests to dismantle legally, along with informally enforced discrimination and segregation at public accommodations. The Bruce's landholders and visitors were not alone in facing legal sanctions and private harassment actions discouraging African Americans from visiting and settling in particular beach towns as the region's population increased during the 1920s. There were confrontations and assaults across decades into the 1950s, some of which turned violent, in their aim to bar African Americans from public beaches and shoreline development opportunities at Los Angeles and Orange County places. Activists would continue to mount legal challenges to these discriminatory practices endeavored by whites. You can read my book and learn more about these places and situations. Finally, constructed in the late 1950s, the land taken by eminent domain for a Manhattan Beach park in 1924 was formally renamed Bruce's Beach in 2007 to recognize the African American pioneers who recreated, attempted to build wealth through real estate investments and to forge community. The new park naming simultaneously acknowledged the white racist sabotage of these pioneers. That's if you had knowledge or have knowledge of the parkland site's history. This was the first step to making the broader public more aware of the accomplishments of Manhattan Beach's African American pioneers, who in spite of challenges took action to develop part of their California and American dreams around leisure culture that would define the Southern California identity and spread across the nation. So fast forward to 2020, new energy arose to reclaim the important marginalized California ocean coastline history of African American places of joy, freedom, freedom struggle, community building, and economic development sabotaged during the Jim Crow era. Bruce's Beach in Manhattan Beach, which I've just given you kind of a summary of, and the Bay Street Beach in Santa Monica, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later, have been recognized by the public in new, visible ways as sites of consciousness, reflection, healing, and pilgrimage at the time when racial inequalities were laid bare by the long history of injustice that led to the death of several African Americans and other people of color. The idea of the Bruce's family land being returned to their descendants re-emerged with a more heightened sense of urgency during this time. Joining this global racial reckoning response, the response around the world, Manhattan Beach, the Manhattan Beach Politi proposed new interpretive panels and artwork at the Bruce's Beach Park section the city owns to tell the story in a fuller fashion. The Manhattan Beach City Council acknowledged and condemned their predecessors' racist land grab to force the Bruce and several other black families out of the area, but stopped short of formally apologizing. Myself, I don't really care about an apology, but I want to see the recognition happen and let's see some, in terms of the ceremonial things, and then also let's see, some, affordable housing efforts to go into the area and programs to, get communities of color out to the beach